The humid air of July 2025 hung heavy over San Francisco, but inside the cramped, sterile lab at the California Department of Justice, the atmosphere was electric. Dr. Aris Thorne, a forensic geneticist known for his stubborn brilliance, stared at the glowing sequence on his screen, a string of letters and symbols that had haunted a nation for over half a century. It was the Zodiac Killer's DNA, a tiny, degraded sample teased from the stamp on one of his infamous letters. For decades, this DNA, a ghost of the killer, had taunted law enforcement. Early techniques were too primitive. Later advancements offered tantalizing glimpses, but no definitive match. Aris and his team had been working on a new, revolutionary method: micro-fragmented genetic genealogy. Instead of needing a large, pristine sample, their algorithm could piece together minuscule, broken segments, cross-referencing them against vast public genealogy databases with unprecedented accuracy. It was a needle-in-a-haystack search, but the haystack now included billions of genetic breadcrumbs. The initial hit was a distant cousin, a fourth-removed relative in Ohio. Then came the painstaking work of building the family tree, branch by agonizing branch, tracing lineages forward and backward through time. Weeks blurred into months. Coffee became a food group. Sleep was a distant memory. Until last night. The name that finally appeared, highlighted in green on Aris's screen, was Robert Bobby Jenkins. Aris felt a cold dread, a familiar knot forming in his stomach, as it always did when a ghost finally took form. Bobby Jenkins. The name meant nothing to him, nothing to any of the seasoned Zodiac investigators he knew. He was no Arthur Lee Allen, no Richard Gaikowski, no Lawrence Kane. This was an unknown. The unseen man. Bobby Jenkins, born in 1934 in a small town outside Vallejo, died peacefully in 2005 of natural causes, a retired high school art teacher. No criminal record, no history of violence, a quiet life, unremarkable in every way. And that was precisely why he was so terrifying. The initial background check yielded a frustrating blankness. Aris pulled up newspaper archives. A dutiful son, served briefly in the Navy, earned a degree in art education, taught for 35 years at Vallejo High, known for his eccentric but kind demeanor. He painted landscapes in his spare time. He volunteered at the local library. He even fostered stray cats. A man utterly devoid of any red flags, any hint of the sadistic monster who terrorized Northern California. "It has to be him, Aris," his lead analyst, Dr. Lena Petrova, said, her voice a low hum of disbelief. "The markers are too precise. The familial lines converge. It's a direct hit." Aris nodded slowly, his gaze still fixed on Jenkins's grainy yearbook photo. A young man with a slight, almost shy smile, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. This was the face of the Zodiac Killer? It defied everything they thought they knew. The deep dive. Why he was missed. The next few months were a blur of intense, soul-crushing investigation. The cold case unit assigned to the Zodiac was reinvigorated but also deeply skeptical. They had chased so many shadows, yet the DNA was irrefutable. The team's first task: understand why Bobby Jenkins was never considered before. Lack of direct connections. Jenkins had no known direct connection to any of the victims or crime scenes that would have put him on law enforcement's radar. He didn't frequent the same bars or move in the same social circles. His car, a modest Ford Falcon, wasn't distinctive. He didn't match any of the initial witness descriptions with striking accuracy, which were often vague or contradictory anyway. The normal life. His routine was mundane. Wake up, go to school, teach, go home, paint, maybe visit the library. He lived alone after his parents passed. No late-night disappearances, no suspicious travel, no unexplainable absences. His alibis, though unverified at the time, would have seemed perfectly plausible. grading papers, painting, sleeping. Psychological profile. Mismatch. The prevailing psychological profiles of the Zodiac pointed to someone craving attention, possibly with a history of petty crime or a more overt antisocial personality. Jenkins was described by former colleagues and students as quiet, a little odd, but harmless. He wasn't a showman. He didn't seek the limelight. This was a man who seemed to avoid attention. No existing suspect template. When law enforcement compiled their initial lists of suspects, they looked for individuals with certain traits. Those with a history of violence, those with a grudge against authority, those with a flair for the dramatic. Bobby Jenkins fit none of those templates. He wasn't on any watch lists. He was simply, statistically, average. The cryptic nature of the Zodiac. The Zodiac reveled in misdirection. The ciphers, the obscure references, the taunts, all designed to throw investigators off. Perhaps Jenkins's normalcy was his ultimate cipher, a mundane facade that was impossible to see through because it was so utterly unremarkable. Who looks for a serial killer in a quiet art teacher? The hidden clues. A deeper look at Jenkins's life. As the investigation deepened, fragments of Jenkins's life began to take on a chilling new light. The art teacher and symbolism. Jenkins taught art, a discipline rich in symbolism, hidden meanings, and the power of visual communication. The Zodiac's symbols, the crosshairs, the astrological references, suddenly this made terrifying sense. Was his art class a subtle laboratory for his twisted mind? Did he discuss symbolic communication with his students, using them as unwitting sounding boards? A fascination with codes and puzzles. A former student from the 1980s, now an elderly man, remembered Mr. Jenkins having an unusual passion for puzzles. He'd bring in these really complex logic puzzles, cryptograms even, for us to solve during free periods, the man recalled. He called it training the mind. We just thought he was a bit nerdy. This seemingly innocuous hobby now screamed volumes. Local knowledge and victim selection. Jenkins lived in Vallejo, then taught there for decades. He knew the geography intimately, the secluded spots, the routes of escape. His victims were often young couples in isolated areas or a lone taxi driver, targets of opportunity, but chosen in locations he was familiar with. The quiet observer. Several colleagues described Jenkins as an astute observer. He wouldn't say much, one retired teacher reminisced, but you always felt like he was taking everything in, like he saw things others missed. This could explain the Zodiac's chilling accuracy in describing crime details not released to the public. No obvious resentment, but perhaps a deeper rage. While outwardly mild-mannered, the Zodiac's letters seethed with anger, a sense of superiority, and a desire to control. Perhaps Jenkins channeled a deep-seated hidden rage into these meticulously planned acts. His quiet nature could have been a perfect mask for a boiling inner world, a man who felt invisible in life, seeking a twisted form of recognition through terror. The final, terrifying pieces. The most chilling revelations came from his home. A meticulous man, Jenkins had kept detailed diaries. Not confessional journals, but ordinary appointment books, grocery lists, and weather observations. Buried within these mundane entries, however, were subtle, almost imperceptible patterns. One entry, dated December 20th, 1968, the night of the Lake Herman Road murders. Finished landscape painting. Cold. Late night. A normal entry for an artist, but cross-referenced with the crime scene details, it now stood out. His art studio in the detached garage contained dozens of landscape paintings. One, unfinished, depicted a secluded road bordered by trees and hills. It was strikingly similar to a stretch of road near Lake Berryessa, where two other Zodiac victims were attacked. Another painting, half-finished, showed a simplified crosshairs symbol faintly sketched into the corner of a landscape, an artistic flourish dismissed by casual observers. The team also found a collection of old newspaper clippings, meticulously cut out. Not just about the Zodiac, but articles about unsolved crimes, ciphers, and even obscure astronomical events. He was an archivist of his own infamy, a silent spectator to the terror he himself was orchestrating. A hidden compartment in an old desk drawer yielded the ultimate confirmation: an aging, tarnished Smith & Wesson .38 revolver, the type used in several Zodiac shootings. Forensic examination confirmed it was the weapon. Beside it, a worn-out hood with crudely cut eye holes, chillingly similar to witness descriptions from Lake Berryessa. The realization hit Aris with the force of a physical blow. Bobby Jenkins wasn't a suspect. He was the Zodiac. He wasn't missed because he was clever. He was missed because he was utterly unremarkable on the surface. He was the embodiment of the neighbor-next-door fallacy. He blended in by being perfectly, terrifyingly normal. The aftermath. A legacy unmasked. The announcement sent shockwaves across the globe. News outlets exploded. True crime podcasts shifted into overdrive. The families of the victims, after decades of agony, finally had a name, a face, however unsettling. For Aris and his team, there was no celebration, only a profound, heavy sense of closure. The ghost had been identified. But the answer brought its own set of disturbing questions. How many other Bobby Jenkinses were out there, hiding in plain sight? How did such a seemingly ordinary man harbor such unimaginable darkness?